I'm going to talk about the Motley Fool now, which one or two people have asked me to review. Now, the Motley Fool, as some people might know, I think it originally started in the US, but there's a UK version and many other versions of the Motley Fool. And basically it ranges from things like podcast opinions, articles, all the way through to a paid service where they give you kind of stock tips. Now, I've looked at the Motley Fool, and indeed I used to listen to their podcast many years ago, the UK version of their podcast. Now, some of the things about the Motley Fool are very good. Some of the opinions are very interesting and very relevant. It has to be remembered as well that the columnists, they all have their individual opinions, right? So it's not like columnist A is going to have the same opinion as columnist B. So there's actually a lot of good information there, but the only kind of two negative things, I'd say the two main negative things are this. Number one, if you're a beginner, it's going to be hard, I think, to see the woods from the trees on a site like Motley Fool sometimes, because there's so much information. Some of it's excellent, some of it's not so good, some of it's in the middle, that maybe actually knowing what's right from wrong is going to be a bit more difficult than if you're, say, a professional in the area. And of course, there's always that kind of tendency to sensationalize a bit. Number two, one of the biggest issues I have though with it is it's trying to say that their stock picks are likely to beat the market long term. And they'll show a lot of graphs saying, oh, if you followed our stock picks, you would have beaten the S&P 500 for so many years or whatever. But long term, statistically speaking, that's very unlikely to continue. So if you follow a stock picker's advice for say 40 or 50 years, it's very unlikely to beat the market like the S&P. Where an expert is much more likely to bring value is things like emotional control, making sure you're calm during times when the market's down, things like how you allocate the assets to kind of give you a good risk-adjusted return. Those are the areas where somebody with a lot of expertise is more likely to help you. Or even something like a specific niche pick which is linked to ETF. So for example, suggesting a FANG ETF because more money was going into the S&P 500, which was going to push big tech higher. I spoke about that trend 6 to 12 months ago, and obviously FANG's done very well since then. But individual picks are always highly risky because there's so many unknown variables with companies. I mean, for example, who could have predicted that, say, General Motors, which was so mighty at one stage that the US government thought about breaking them up, would then need a bailout? Or even if you look at some of the companies we're seeing come up or down in the last 10 years, it's clear that nobody could have predicted these things in advance. So that's the main issue I have with Motley Fool, in terms of it's very unlikely to do what it says on the tin if you're actually going to use a stock picking service, which is especially popular, I think, on the American version. But just as an informational resource, I've seen many good articles there, bad articles, some in the middle. So it's not a bad website at all, but I would kind of avoid using it for stock picking purposes. Okay, everyone, I've got some really exciting news today. So for a couple of years now, many people have asked me, well, look, I can't afford your minimum investments, but I really like your advice. I don't know if you can do this or you can do that, or you can help me in that way, or you can't help me in that way. I've always said, no, I can only do this or that, but I've got some really exciting news, and that's that in a couple of months before the end of the year, I will be bringing out what I'm calling the Adam Fayed Academy, which will have many new areas which will be of interest to people. So things like mentoring, tutoring, all those kind of things that people have asked me for in the past. So stay tuned. I'm going to be announcing it in the next few months, but I thought I would tell it to you guys before. Let me know if there's anything in particular that you're looking for in this academy. We're going to be focusing on many different areas, including how to invest productively, also some business areas, because that's another thing people have asked me about before. So stay tuned, and I'll keep you up to date.